Take personal responsibility. There's a little anarchy in that too, isn't there? So just more generally then, now that we've made the first connection, punk in general. So first, there was a sonic reaction to what was going on in the late 70s in places like, CBGB's comes out of the Ramones, the Talking Heads, television, that really stressed passion over talent with the way they played music. And a lot of the times there was also an attitude that was shared by a lot of the people in the movement, political message, and often that was subversion. Just, for example, the two songs we just listened to, especially White Riot. Okay, that's very anti-authority, I think, and personal agency, moving forwards again. So just generally, I think punk shares a lot of these traits that Michael was stressing with the folk stuff, and Guthrie, and Joe Hill, and Utah Phillips as well. Now, just more generally, like in a community sense, and trying to bring in the anarchy into the fold, I'm a pretty serious researcher, like Indiana Jones. And a while back, I was in Albany, New York, in an archive there, the State Library, because they have a fanzine archive, the Fact Sheet 5 zine archive. And this guy had a zine. So, does anybody not know what a zine is? It's like a newsletter magazine, the do-it-yourself thing that you would just put together to share information with other people on a certain subject. So there was tens of thousands of these in America in the 80s and 90s, and there was a guy that reviewed all of them. And so people would always send him these fanzines, and he would read them all, review them, and put them in his own fanzine, which just ranked and listed how good they all were. And oddly enough, he got tired of it, and he donated them all to the archive in Albany for people like me to go through and read. And when I was doing my important, profound research, I found one from San Diego called The Daily Impulse, and I read some issues of it from the mid-'80s, and it was anti-government, anti-war, and an anarchy zine, but it was also completely linked into punk. And it wasn't the kind of, middle school anarchy. It was the personal responsibility, personal agency, working together, community, help each other out type anarchy. And they were quoting lots of old anarchists, and they used a lot of imagery and stylized mottos. One of the ones they used was "War is the health of the state." So, and they'd have like anti-draft poetry and very anti-state, anti-authority stuff. Yeah, was it the late 80s where Nike bought the Beatles song Revolution? 87? Anyway, yeah. They were very against that. And they had another stylized imagery campaign that said, "Honor John Lennon, boycott Nike." Politically, not just anti-corporate, but politically, my favorite one was they had this picture of a hammer and a sickle, and the sickle had impaled a punk rocker, and it said, "Don't be fooled, Leninism equals red fascism." So, very political. Also, they had, I think my other favorite one was a picture of some spotlights on a fence, and some people trying to run across, and it said, "No borders, let them through." So, anti-border, anti-state, again and again. And it was just completely combined with articles on DIY punk. Like, oh, so you want to be a punk? You want to be DIY? This might help. And there was also information on anarchy history, and just completely from an anti-authoritarian slant. They reviewed a concert that Social Distortion played in, I think it was October 1984, and the police had come and arrested some people because, like, all Mike Ness did was throw a bottle at the bouncer, and then they arrested him, and then they arrested a bunch of punks as well. And so, I might agree with them being mad about that, but anti-authority is just laced in the whole zine. And where was I going with that? Somehow that connects back to folk. It does in a sense that they also stage picnics and very community-type, folk-type events where they just go out, have a picnic, food, kids, all ages, have bands play, and then usually the police would come and break it up. But they were always trying to do communal things that transcended borders, government, state, and just do things at a very grassroots level. So they did take some of the positive aspects of anarchy pretty seriously. Another connection? We're doing good. So, Michael mentioned the A with the cross through it. Bringing anarchy and anti-authority into a case study, as we're about to. The band DOA from Vancouver. Often when you see the DOA symbol, the A is in an anarchy sign. But again, they're talking about the anarchy that we've been discussing tonight, not the middle school kind. And the singer of the band, guitar player Joey Keithley, since the late 70s, he's been playing, I consider it folk music with more force. And they'd always play, they wouldn't, play stadiums or anything because they're a punk band from Vancouver, so they were playing anywhere they could. But a lot of the shows they did were rocking against things, like rocking against racism, rocking against Reagan, rocking against prisons, rocking against nuclear weapons, rocking against environmental destruction, environment and poverty. All these different things. And they were just activists all the time. And I interviewed Joey Keithley last week, and I asked him about that. And I was like, so, how do you think politics intertwine with what you do? And he said, well, I don't consider myself a politician, like not that into politics, but these are very DIY notes. I want to get the quote right, I gotta find it though. Should wear glasses. Yeah, he says something profound. Anybody know a joke while I'm looking for that? So, yeah. Anyway. Might not even be on here. Yeah, that might work. What quote were we looking for again? So, I was just stalling so you guys would have a chance to go get a drink.
Go to the back.
Okay, I don't consider myself a politician, but a social activist, a professional troublemaker. So, I was actively involved in professional troublemaking, which was usually activism against things that were state-sponsored. And, for example, there's a place in British Columbia called the Stein Valley, and according to Keithley, it was a bastion, if I'm saying that word right, of unlogged terrain. And so, of course, they wanted to develop it. So when this was supposed to start, DOA went to play a protest show like right in logger territory. So they're going in, they're asking directions from loggers, and they're getting threats, and they end up playing like a little small show in a high school gymnasium. And fine, they were on the front lines. The next year, John Denver gets behind it, and then all of a sudden it's a big corporate thing, and change actually happens. But Keithley believes that somebody has to be on the front lines actually getting people to be aware of what's happening. And maybe he doesn't get to have the media hoopla that Denver got, and all the corporate attention and the money and everything from that, but they're usually trying to find what's going on and just raise awareness of it. And that's why he considers himself a social activist. There was other cases like, I don't know if anybody came to the combined panel from history and classics and music last year. It was done at Dewey's. Pretty good, hey? Yeah. That band that played, awesome. Mug Bait, Rylan Wolves, video, and that talk I did was on the Vancouver 5. And anybody remembers there was a musician named Gerald Hanna that used to play with Joe Keithley, and then he joined that group called Direct Action that blew a bunch of stuff up. Well, they went to trial, being tried against the state that they were attacking, and where Keithley didn't agree with using violence, let me find another quote. He said, I don't agree with their methods. Their goals, yes. Their methods, no. But they didn't have any money for trials, so they would just go out, DOA and other bands in the underground network in the States, like the Dead Kennedys. They would host benefits just to try and see that they got a fair trial. So that anti-authority thing was always going strong. So I thought, well, if I'm going to be doing a talk on linking punk and folk, I should probably ask Keithley what he thinks of that. since he's the guy I'm trying to connect to it. So first I asked him, can you categorize music by how it sounds or its attitude? And he said, well, it's a combination of the two. If they don't have anything to say, though, then it's not punk. You know, you can give somebody a mohawk and the punk shorts and the punk shirt, but you can tell if they're phony right away. If they don't have the attitude to go along with it, it's like, that guy's not punk, he's just pretending. He said that you could find a guy in some nice pants and a button-up shirt, and they could be the biggest punk rocker in the world, as long as they have the attitude. So I followed that question up with well then, was Woody Guthrie a punk? And Keith Lee said he definitely had the attitude, and he had an incredible knack for judging what was going on at the time and putting it into song. The guy was a pioneer. You listen to it now and the message is still true. Amazing. That good and that much on the money. So he really couldn't have said anything better to agree with what we're arguing here, right? And so then we both kind of agreed on that DOA could be a folk band with more sonic force. And I guess he quoted some magazines from over the years that have called DOA like mega decibel minstrels, and just always going back to like this folk connection. So it's been there for a while. And so then he was against direct actions, use of violence to try and get activism out and to see what people's response was to that, those issues like, environment destruction and the Cold War and all that stuff. And so I asked, there's a group on campus called Music is a Weapon, and I asked him what he thought of that. And he said, well, yeah, of course, music can be a weapon. And so I really think that what DOA and other bands like that have been activists in the punk scene, they've really tried to use music as a weapon. Start a white riot or something like it to get the word out about stuff and get people thinking and these political messages out there. So I think Keith Lee said that Guthrie had a knack for judging what was going on and responding to it, but I think they both do. Keith Lee, just as much as Guthrie, has that knack. And I think that might be the biggest connection between punk and folk, is the people that play this kind of music and perform this way and try and do this kind of activism, they have knacks to react and respond to what's going on and produce music that applies to that. So, they play protest music, they're both activists, they both made meaningful noise. So how can you judge their dissent with different labels? Think about that. Now, back to the mutable future part, with the world moving forward. So I guess it's like these musicians are kind of looking at, well, how do you want to shape the world? What direction do you want to move it in? And they're trying to push it in a certain direction, which it just seems to be social activism and justice for a lot of people. So to go along with that, I asked, one of the last questions I asked Keith Lee was about the WikiLeaks that showed that Beyonce and Mariah Carey and Usher all were playing for Gaddafi's family. So I was asking him what he thought of that. And well, he was like, well, they're sure not helping the world move forward then, are they? And I guess now like it's come out like Mariah Carey was like, oh, I didn't know I was playing for them. But so you have music, like professional musicians like that they just either don't care enough to know who they're playing for and have the kind of social capital that they could change things, but they just play for Gaddafi's family instead. So they're not really working to topple those structures of inequality that seem to be around, and that bands like The Clash or DOA or Woody Guthrie on the other side of the fence in This Land Is Our Land we're trying to get over. So should we go to Morello?
Yeah, so I guess to close our conversation and bring it back to bring things around. For those of you familiar with Rage Against the Machine, the guitarist from Rage Against the Machine, Tom Morello, has another ego, an alter ego, I suppose, the Night Watchman. And Morello very explicitly called himself Woody Guthrie. Brought out a nylon string guitar and wrote on the side of it, if we had PowerPoint we could show you. In the 40s, Guthrie had scrawled across a number of guitars, everywhere he was playing, "This machine kills fascists." And Morello, following that on his guitars now in black marker, wrote, with a